The recruitment station on Luna Base buzzed with activity as representatives from 17 different alien species processed new conscripts for the Galactic Defense Force. Commander Zektar, a towering Vraxian with 4 arms and chitinous armor plating, surveyed the latest batch of humans with obvious disdain. His mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. More primitive bipeds, he muttered to his aide, a serpentine Sithrak named Velosh. Look at them, Velosh. No natural armor, no enhanced reflexes, no electromagnetic vision. The Galactic Council insists we include every species in our defense force, but these humans are barely evolved beyond throwing rocks. Velosh's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. The reports say they show promise in certain areas, Commander. Their adaptability scores are unusually high. Zektar's 4 eyes rolled in unison. Adaptability means nothing when plasma bolts are flying. We've been fighting the Void Swarm for 3 centuries. This war requires precision, speed, and overwhelming firepower. These soft-skinned creatures will be vaporized before they can even sight their targets. Among the human recruits stood Marcus Chen, a former Marine sniper from Earth's Pacific conflict. At 32, he was older than most recruits, his weathered face bearing the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death and made it his profession. While other humans gawked at the alien technology surrounding them, Marcus remained focused, his sharp eyes cataloging every detail of the station's layout and the various species around him. The orientation hall was a marvel of galactic engineering, its walls displaying holographic star maps and tactical readouts from across known space. Representatives from each major species stood at attention as High Admiral Tethvar, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into dazzling patterns, addressed the new recruits. Warriors of the Galactic Defense Force. Tethvar's voice resonated through crystalline harmonics that universal translators converted into speech. You stand at the edge of the greatest conflict our galaxy has ever known. The Void Swarm threatens not just our worlds but the very fabric of space itself. Each of you brings unique capabilities to this fight. Zektar snorted quietly. The Vraxians were the galaxy's premier soldiers, their natural weapons and armor making them perfect for close-quarters combat. The Kelthani brought their energy manipulation abilities, while the Morphic Collective offered shape-shifting reconnaissance specialists. But humans? What could they possibly contribute? Your training will push you beyond your limits, Tethvar continued. You will learn to use weapons that channel the power of stars, operate in environments that would destroy your homeworlds, and fight alongside species whose very existence was unknown to you mere days ago. As the briefing concluded, the recruits were divided into training groups based on their species and aptitudes. Marcus found himself assigned to Firebase Omega-7, a training facility on the asteroid Kepler 442c. The transport ship was a sleek Zephyrian vessel that folded space around itself, covering distances that would take human ships decades in mere hours. During the journey, Marcus observed his fellow recruits. The Vraxians dominated the ship's common areas, their natural aggression making them natural leaders among the more timid species. They spoke loudly about their homeworld's military traditions and the countless battles their ancestors had won through superior strength and tactics. You see that human over there? Zektar pointed one of his forearms toward Marcus, who sat quietly in a corner, cleaning a primitive projectile weapon the humans had been allowed to keep for training purposes. They still use chemical propellants. Chemical propellants. While we wield plasma rifles that can punch through starship hulls, they're still playing with gunpowder and metal slugs. The other Vraxians clicked their mandibles in amusement. Perhaps we should challenge them to a marksmanship contest, suggested Braktor, Zektar's second-in-command. Show them what real soldiers can do. Marcus looked up from his rifle, having caught enough of their conversation through his translator implant. I'd be happy to accept any challenge you'd like to offer, he said calmly, his voice carrying just enough confidence to make the Vraxians pause. Zektar's 4 eyes narrowed. The human's tone suggested he wasn't intimidated, which was either foolish bravery or dangerous competence. You think your primitive weapon can compete with Vraxian plasma technology? I think marksmanship is about more than just the weapon, Marcus replied, returning his attention to his rifle. But we'll find out soon enough. The challenge was set for their first week of training. Firebase Omega-7 turned out to be a massive complex built into the asteroid's core, with training ranges that could simulate any environment in the galaxy. The facility's commander, General Korvash of the Kelthani Republic, was known for his no-nonsense approach to military training and his particular expertise in long-range combat tactics. "Before we begin your specialized training," Korvash announced to the assembled recruits, "we will conduct baseline assessments of your current capabilities. This includes marksmanship, tactical awareness, and combat reflexes." The marksmanship range was a marvel of technology, capable of projecting holographic targets at distances up to 10 kilometers, while simulating various atmospheric conditions, gravitational fields, and environmental hazards. Each species would demonstrate their preferred fighting style and weapons. The Vraxians went first, their plasma rifles crackling with energy as they engaged targets at medium range with devastating effect. Their shots left glowing craters in the target drones, and their accuracy was impressive by most standards. Zektar particularly excelled, hitting 93% of his targets at ranges up to 2 kilometers. The Kelthani followed, using their natural energy manipulation to guide projectiles with supernatural precision. Their hit rates were even higher than the Vraxians, though their weapons lacked the raw destructive power. When it came time for the human demonstration, most of the alien observers expected a poor showing. Marcus stepped up to the firing line with his chemical propellant rifle, a weapon that looked primitive and crude compared to the energy weapons the other species wielded. "What range would you like to attempt?" General Korvash asked, expecting the human to request something modest. Marcus studied the rangefinder and environmental readings. 8 kilometers, please. With atmospheric interference simulation, a ripple of surprised murmurs went through the observation deck. Even the Vraxians had only attempted ranges up to 3 kilometers. Korvash's expression remained neutral, but his interest was clearly piqued. The target drone appeared as a small speck in the distance, barely visible even with the range's enhanced optics. Marcus settled into his firing position, his breathing becoming deep and regular as he entered the focused state that had made him legendary among Earth's military forces. The observation deck fell silent as Marcus adjusted his rifle's scope. Through the advanced optics, he could see the target drone hovering 8 kilometers away, a small metallic sphere no larger than a dinner plate. The range's atmospheric simulation created heat distortions and wind patterns that would challenge even the most sophisticated targeting computers. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the artificial gravity of the asteroid, sensing the subtle vibrations in the deck plating, calculating wind speed and direction from the environmental data, streaming across his rifle's primitive digital display. When he opened his eyes, his breathing had settled into the rhythm that had served him through countless missions on Earth. "Impossible," whispered Bractor to his fellow Vraxians. "No organic being can accurately target something that distant without computer assistance." Marcus's finger found the trigger. The weapon's report was sharp and primitive compared to the hum of plasma rifles, but the projectile streaked across the range with deadly precision. 8 seconds later, the target drone exploded in a shower of metallic fragments. The silence on the observation deck was deafening. Even General Korvash's typically stoic expression showed surprise. The range's computer system chimed with the confirmation. "Direct hit, center mass, at 8.2 kilometers. "Beginner's luck," Zektar growled, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "One shot proves nothing." "You're absolutely right," Marcus replied, ejecting the spent cartridge and loading another round. "Shall we try again?" What followed was a display of marksmanship that redefined what the Galactic observers thought possible. Marcus engaged targets at distances up to 12 kilometers, adjusting for wind, gravity variations, and atmospheric conditions with calculations that seemed to happen purely in his head. His hit rate remained above 95% even at extreme range. But it wasn't just the accuracy that impressed the observers. It was the way Marcus seemed to understand the environment itself. Where other species relied on their enhanced senses or technological augmentation, the human appeared to read invisible signs in the air, feeling patterns that sophisticated sensors could barely detect. "How is he doing this?" Velosh asked Korvash during a brief pause in the demonstration. "Our intelligence reports indicate humans have no enhanced sensory capabilities." Korvash studied Marcus carefully as the human prepared for another shot. "Perhaps our intelligence reports are incomplete. There may be more to these humans than we initially assessed." The demonstration concluded, with Marcus hitting a target at 15 kilometers while the range simulated a dust storm that reduced visibility to nearly zero. The projectile found its mark despite conditions that would have made accurate shooting impossible for most species, even with advanced technological assistance. As the other recruits dispersed for their next training session, Zektar approached Marcus with a mixture of respect and confusion. "Human, I must know. What technology are you using? What enhancements have your people developed?" Marcus began cleaning his rifle with practiced movements. "No technology beyond what you see here. No enhancements beyond what every human possesses. That's impossible. No natural creature can shoot with such precision. Every human child learns to throw rocks at targets," Marcus explained, running a cleaning rod through his rifle's barrel. "Then balls, darts, arrows. We've been refining our understanding of trajectory, wind, and distance for thousands of years. It's not technology or enhancement. It's practice and instinct developed over generations." Zektar's mandibles clicked nervously. If what the human claimed was true, then Earth's entire population possessed this capability to some degree. But the distances, the precision... "I've been shooting for 20 years, Marcus continued. Started hunting with my grandfather when I was 12. Joined the military at 18. Spent 6 years as a designated marksman before becoming a sniper. Every day for 2 decades, I've been learning to read wind patterns, atmospheric pressure, humidity, temperature gradients. Your advanced sensors tell you what these conditions are. I've learned to feel them." This revelation sent ripples through the training facility's command structure. If humans possessed such natural aptitude for long-range precision, it fundamentally changed how they should be integrated into galactic military doctrine. General Korvash immediately requisitioned access to Earth's military records, specifically focusing on sniper training programs and marksmanship achievements. What he discovered exceeded even his revised expectations. Earth's military history was filled with legendary marksmen who had achieved seemingly impossible shots under extreme conditions. During Earth's various conflicts, snipers had regularly engaged targets at distances exceeding 2 kilometers using weapons that galactic engineers would consider primitive museum pieces. The most startling discovery was that these achievements weren't rare exceptions among humans. Earth's military forces routinely trained thousands of snipers to standards that would qualify them as elite marksmen by galactic standards. The human concept of designated marksman described soldiers who weren't even considered specialists, but possessed shooting skills that rivaled the best warriors in the galaxy. "Sir," his aide reported, "I've found records of something called the International Sniper Competition, held annually on Earth. The winning shots regularly exceed 3 kilometers, and the participants are using weapons with no energy assistance whatsoever." Korvash studied the data streams with growing amazement. "How many humans participate in these competitions?" "Hundreds, sir. And that's just the military competition. They have civilian versions with even more participants." The implications were staggering. Earth didn't just have a few exceptional marksmen. They had developed an entire culture around precision shooting, with millions of individuals practicing these skills recreationally. It was as if an entire species had accidentally evolved to be the galaxy's perfect snipers. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his training alongside recruits from other species, gradually earning their respect through consistent performance rather than boastful display. The Kelthani recruits, initially dismissive of human capabilities, began asking him for advice on reading environmental conditions. Even some of the younger Vraxians started observing his techniques, trying to understand how he achieved such consistency without relying on their species' natural advantages. During a tactical exercise in the facility's urban combat simulator, Marcus demonstrated another aspect of human marksmanship that caught the instructor's attention. While other species excelled at different aspects of warfare, humans seemed to possess an intuitive understanding of what the galactic military termed geometric warfare, the ability to predict enemy movement patterns and position themselves for optimal engagement angles. "Watch how he moves," observed Instructor Vexkar, a veteran Morphic Collective operative. "He's not just finding good shooting positions. He's positioning himself where the enemy will be forced to move. He's predicting their tactical decisions." Marcus had chosen a position that seemed suboptimal to most observers, partially exposed with limited escape routes. But as the exercise progressed, it became clear that he had anticipated exactly how the opposing forces would attempt to flank his position. His shooting angles remained optimal throughout the engagement, allowing him to eliminate multiple targets while remaining relatively safe from return fire. It's like he can see the entire battlefield as a mathematical equation. Vexkar continued. Angles, distances, timing. He's calculating all of it simultaneously. When questioned about his tactical choices after the exercise, Marcus struggled to explain his decision-making process. It just felt right, he said. When you spend enough time looking through a scope, you start to understand how people move, how they think. You learn to be where they don't expect you to be. This intuitive tactical awareness, combined with his extraordinary marksmanship skills, made Marcus stand out even among the elite recruits at Firebase Omega-7. But more importantly, it suggested that humans might possess natural abilities that could revolutionize galactic military doctrine, particularly in the ongoing war against the Void Swarm. News of the human marksman's abilities spread throughout the Galactic Defense Force faster than Marcus could have imagined. Within days of his demonstration, Firebase Omega-7 received an unexpected visitor, War Marshal Thexarin, the legendary Vraxian warrior who commanded the entire 7th Fleet. His arrival sent shockwaves through the training facility, as war marshals typically only visited combat zones or the most critical strategic installations. Thexarin stood 9 feet tall, his chitinous armor bearing the scars of countless battles against the Void Swarm. Unlike other Vraxians, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. His forearms bore ceremonial weapons from his homeworld, but his eyes held the calculating intelligence that had made him one of the galaxy's most respected military leaders. I came to see this human marksman for myself, Thexarin announced to General Korvash. The report strained credibility. No organic being should be capable of such precision without technological enhancement. Marcus was summoned to the command center, where he found himself face-to-face with galactic military royalty. The War Marshal studied him with 4 piercing eyes, searching for any sign of hidden augmentation or technological assistance. Human Marcus Chen, Thexarin's voice carried the authority of absolute command. I have reviewed your performance records. Either you are utilizing technology unknown to our sensors, or your species possesses capabilities that have been grossly underestimated. No hidden technology, sir, Marcus replied respectfully. Just training and practice. Thexarin's mandibles clicked skeptically. I have killed Void Swarm creatures at ranges exceeding 5 kilometers, using the most advanced plasma weaponry available. Yet you claim to match such performance with primitive chemical propellants. Demonstrate this supposed ability. The War Marshal had brought his own challenge, a specially modified Void Swarm hunter-killer drone, captured during the Battle of Kepler Prime and reprogrammed for training purposes. The drone possessed all the evasive capabilities of its original programming, including adaptive camouflage, erratic movement patterns, and energy shielding that made it nearly invisible to most detection systems. This drone will be released at maximum range, Thexarin explained as they moved to the advanced training range. It will attempt to reach the facility's perimeter using full evasive protocols. Your task is to neutralize it before it completes its approach. The drone's movements cannot be predicted, and its shielding will make traditional targeting systems ineffective. Marcus studied the tactical display showing the drone's release point, 15 kilometers away across terrain that included rocky outcroppings, atmospheric interference generators, and holographic decoy fields. It was a shot that would challenge even the most advanced computer-assisted targeting systems. What makes you think this is possible? Marcus asked, not from doubt but from tactical curiosity. I don't, Thexarin replied bluntly. I expect you to fail, and in doing so prove that human capabilities have been exaggerated. However, if you succeed, it will fundamentally change how we approach the war against the Void Swarm. As Marcus prepared his rifle, a crowd of observers gathered in the command center. Word had spread throughout Firebase Omega-7 that the legendary War Marshal was testing the human marksman. Alien species that had initially dismissed human capabilities now watched with growing interest. The drone launch appeared on tactical displays as a small blip moving erratically across the asteroid's surface. Its adaptive camouflage made visual tracking nearly impossible, and its energy signature kept shifting to avoid detection. Most observers lost sight of it within seconds of launch. Marcus didn't rely on the displays. Instead, he studied the terrain between his position and the drone's projected path, looking for environmental cues that would reveal its location. Dust patterns in the artificial atmosphere, subtle changes in electromagnetic readings, the barely perceptible shadows cast by the facility's lighting systems all became part of his targeting calculation. There, he whispered to himself, identifying a disruption in the atmospheric pattern that suggested the drone's passage. His rifle tracked smoothly across the landscape, following movement that others couldn't even detect. The shot came without warning, the chemical propellant's sharp report echoing across the range. 15 seconds later, an explosion lit up the distant terrain as the projectile found its mark. The tactical displays confirmed what many observers found hard to believe. Direct hit on a target that their most advanced sensors had barely been able to track. Thexeran stared at the tactical readout in silence for nearly a minute. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a mixture of amazement and strategic calculation. "How did you track a target that our sensors could barely detect?" "I didn't track the target directly," Marcus explained, beginning the familiar process of cleaning his rifle. "I tracked the disturbances it created in the environment. Everything that moves leaves traces. Compressed air, displaced dust, electromagnetic shadows. The drone's camouflage hid it from your sensors, but it couldn't hide its interaction with the world around it." This revelation sent the War Marshal's tactical mind racing. The Void Swarm's greatest advantage in ground combat was their adaptive camouflage technology, which made their infiltrator units nearly invisible to conventional detection methods. Entire defensive positions had fallen, because sentries couldn't spot approaching swarm creatures until they were within striking distance. "You're telling me you can detect camouflaged enemies by reading environmental disturbances?" "Any experienced hunter can," Marcus replied. "Track a deer through thick forest and you'll learn to see what isn't obvious. Every creature that moves changes its environment in subtle ways. The bigger the creature, the more changes it creates." Thexeran's strategic mind immediately grasped the implications. If humans could naturally detect camouflaged enemies, they could serve as early warning systems for defensive positions. Their marksmanship abilities would allow them to engage threats at ranges that exceeded most enemy weapons. Combined, these capabilities could revolutionize defensive tactics. "Human Marcus Chen," Thexeran said formally, "you will accompany me to Fleet Command." High Admiral Tethvar must witness this demonstration personally. The journey to Fleet Command took them through the galaxy's most heavily defended system, where massive space stations coordinated the war effort against the Void Swarm. Marcus found himself aboard Thexeran's flagship, a Vraxian dreadnought bristling with weapons that could shatter planets. The contrast between his primitive rifle and the ship's devastating firepower wasn't lost on him. During the voyage, Thexeran shared tactical briefings about the war that few beings outside the highest command levels ever saw. The Void Swarm wasn't just another hostile alien species. They were something far more dangerous. Their ability to adapt and evolve during combat made them almost impossible to defeat using conventional tactics. "We estimate each swarm creature can modify its capabilities 7 to 10 times during a single engagement," Thexeran explained as they reviewed battle footage. "Weapons that prove effective initially become useless within minutes as the creatures adapt. Defensive positions that should hold for hours fall in minutes because the swarm learns to counter our tactics faster than we can implement them." Marcus studied the footage with professional interest. The swarm creatures moved unlike anything he had encountered, their adaptations happening in real time as they learned from each encounter. But beneath the alien capabilities he recognized familiar patterns, the movements of predators adapting to prey, the tactical flexibility of experienced soldiers adjusting to changing conditions. "They're not just adapting randomly," he observed. "There's pattern to their changes. They're learning, which means they can be predicted." Thexeran paused the briefing. "Explain." "Every adaptation is a response to specific stimuli," Marcus continued. "They encounter a defense, they modify to counter it. But that modification creates new vulnerabilities. The key isn't to create unchanging defenses. It's to predict their adaptations and exploit the weaknesses those adaptations create." This insight struck at the heart of galactic military doctrine. For 3 centuries, the Galactic Defense Force had attempted to create weapons and defenses so powerful that adaptation couldn't overcome them. Marcus was suggesting a completely different approach, using the swarm's adaptability against them by predicting and exploiting the limitations each adaptation created. Human, tactical thinking may be more valuable than human marksmanship. Thexeran mused as they approached Fleet Command. Your species appears to understand adaptation warfare in ways we have not considered. Fleet Command was a massive station built into an asteroid belt, its defensive capabilities rivaling those of entire star systems. High Admiral Tethvar received them in the Strategic Command Center, where holographic displays showed the war's current status across dozens of star systems. The crystalline being's body refracted the display lights into complex patterns that seemed to mirror the tactical situation itself. High Admiral Tethvar's crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated deep contemplation as she reviewed the reports from Firebase. Omega-7. The Strategic Command Center hummed with activity as officers from across the galaxy coordinated defensive operations against the ever-advancing Void Swarm. In the center of this controlled chaos, Marcus stood before the highest military authority in known space, his primitive rifle looking absurdly out of place among the advanced holographic displays and energy weapons. War Marshal Thexerin speaks highly of your abilities. Tethvar's harmonic voice carried undertones of skepticism. However, individual marksmanship, no matter how exceptional, cannot change the course of a galactic war. We face millions of swarm creatures across hundreds of systems. What can one human marksman accomplish against such numbers? With respect, Admiral, Marcus replied, I don't think you're asking the right question. It's not what one human can do. It's what thousands of humans might accomplish if properly trained and equipped. Thexerin stepped forward. Admiral, I've reviewed Earth's military records in detail. This human represents not an exception among his species, but a standard they routinely achieve. Earth maintains standing armies with marksmen of comparable skill. The Admiral's crystalline structure shifted to deeper blues and purples, colors that indicated serious strategic consideration. Show me. What followed was the most comprehensive demonstration of human military capabilities ever conducted outside Earth's solar system. Marcus wasn't just showcasing his individual skills, he was representing an entire species' military potential. The testing took place across multiple environments that simulated actual combat conditions. From the war against the Void Swarm, the first test involved engaging multiple camouflage targets in an urban warfare scenario, based on the recent Battle of Centauri colony. Holographic swarm creatures programmed with actual movement patterns from battlefield recordings infiltrated a simulated city, while Marcus provided overwatch from a concealed position. The aliens observed in amazement as he systematically eliminated threats that their sensors could barely detect, calling out enemy positions to imaginary ground forces with pinpoint accuracy. Target, 2 o'clock, 800 meters, moving through the marketplace, Marcus reported calmly as his rifle tracked an almost invisible enemy. The shot rang out and another holographic swarm creature dissolved. Second target, same location, using the first one's body for cover. The second shot came 3 seconds later, finding a target that had been completely hidden from all observing sensors. The tactical computer confirmed another direct hit on an enemy that shouldn't have been detectable. How did you know the second target was there? Asked Fleet Intelligence Director Corvex, a multi-eyed being whose species specialized in pattern recognition. The first creature was moving with purpose, but its path didn't make tactical sense unless it was coordinating with another unit, Marcus explained while reloading. The angles of approach suggested a 2-creature team, with the second one positioned to exploit any defensive response to the first's movement. This level of tactical prediction astounded the Galactic observers. Marcus wasn't just reacting to what he could see. He was anticipating enemy movements based on their behavioral patterns, something that had never been successfully achieved against the adaptive Void Swarm. The second test pushed Marcus to his absolute limits. The scenario recreated the disastrous defense of Kepler Station, where swarm creatures had overwhelmed defensive positions by adapting faster than defenders could respond. Marcus was given a single rifle and tasked with protecting a simulated evacuation point against waves of adapting enemies. The holographic swarm creatures began their approach using standard infiltration patterns, but as Marcus engaged them, they started adapting to his tactics. Creatures that initially moved in predictable patterns began using erratic movements. Those that survived his first shots developed enhanced armor. The challenge would test whether human adaptability could match swarm evolution. Marcus adjusted his tactics continuously, switching between different types of ammunition, changing his firing positions and varying his engagement patterns. But more importantly, he began predicting how the creatures would adapt and preparing countermeasures in advance. Switching to fragmenting rounds, he announced, as the creatures developed thicker armor. They'll adapt to those by dispersing into smaller units. So I'm pre-positioning for area denial fire. Sure enough, the swarm creatures adapted exactly as Marcus predicted. But his countermeasures were already in place. Each adaptation cycle, the simulated enemies found themselves facing tactics designed specifically to exploit their new capabilities. After 90 minutes of continuous engagement, the simulation ended with the evacuation point successfully defended. The tactical computer's analysis showed something unprecedented. A human had not only matched swarm adaptation rates but had actually stayed ahead of them, predicting and countering their evolution cycles. "Remarkable," whispered Admiral Tethvar, her crystalline form now pulsing with colors indicating profound strategic revelation. "You didn't just resist their adaptations, you guided them toward vulnerabilities you had prepared to exploit." "Every adaptation has costs," Marcus replied, exhaustion evident in his voice. "Make them adapt in directions that benefit you, and their own evolution becomes a weapon against them." The demonstrations continued for 3 days, with Marcus facing scenarios based on actual battle conditions from across the war zones. He engaged targets in zero gravity, hostile atmospheres, and electromagnetic interference that would disable most advanced targeting systems. Each test revealed new aspects of human military capabilities that had been completely overlooked by galactic strategists. But the most significant revelation came during a tactical planning exercise. Admiral Tethvar presented Marcus with intelligence reports from the Void Swarm's latest offensive in the Andromeda Spiral, asking for his assessment of their strategies and potential countermeasures. Marcus studied the data with the eye of a professional soldier, rather than an impressed alien recruit. "They're not adapting randomly," he concluded after several hours of analysis. "There's a learning pattern here. Each adaptation builds on previous ones, suggesting some form of collective intelligence or central coordination." The Admiral's colors shifted to patterns indicating surprise. "Our xenobiologists have theorized about swarm collective intelligence, but we've found no evidence of centralized command structures." "Maybe you're looking for the wrong kind of command structure," Marcus suggested. "On Earth, we have species that coordinate through chemical signals, electromagnetic fields, quantum entanglement. The swarm might be using something we haven't considered." This insight opened entirely new avenues for intelligence analysis. If the swarm operated through some form of distributed intelligence network, it might be possible to disrupt their coordination, or even feed them false information to guide their adaptations in desired directions. "Human Marcus Chen," Admiral Tethvar announced formally, "I am authorizing the immediate expansion of human recruitment for the Galactic Defense Force. Furthermore, I want you to return to Earth and establish a training program that can prepare human marksmen for integration with our forces." "How many humans are you thinking of recruiting?" Marcus asked. The Admiral's crystalline form brightened to colors indicating firm resolve. "All of them who are willing and able. If your species possesses these capabilities naturally, then we need every human we can get. The war against the Void Swarm has reached a critical phase and traditional tactics are failing. Human adaptability and marksmanship may be exactly what we need to turn the tide." Thexaren stepped forward with additional orders. "You will also work with our weapon development teams to create hybrid technologies, combining human tactical instincts with galactic firepower. If humans can achieve such precision with primitive weapons, imagine what they might accomplish with proper equipment." As Marcus prepared to return to Earth, he realized that his species was about to play a role in galactic affairs that no one had anticipated. Humans had been considered minor contributors to the galactic community, valued primarily for their adaptability and determination. Now they were being recognized as potentially the galaxy's most effective warriors against humanity's greatest threat. The journey home gave Marcus time to consider the magnitude of what lay ahead. Earth's military forces would need to adapt to technologies and tactical situations beyond anything in human experience. But more importantly, humanity would need to accept its new role as the galaxy's designated hunters in a war against creatures that seemed almost impossible to defeat. The primitive rifle he carried had opened a door to humanity's future among the stars. Now it was time to see whether his species could live up to the expectations that one marksman's demonstration had created. Earth's reaction to Marcus's return was unlike anything the planet had experienced since first contact. Within hours of his shuttle landing at Luna Base, every major military organization on Earth had received priority communications from the Galactic Defense Force, requesting immediate coordination meetings. The implications of Admiral Tethvar's recruitment authorization were staggering. Humanity was being invited to join the galaxy's war not as minor contributors, but as specialized elite forces. Marcus found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity that involved everyone from Pentagon generals to international military advisors. The briefing room at the newly established Earth Defense Coordination Center buzzed with tension as he explained what he had witnessed in the galactic war zones. The Void Swarm isn't just another enemy, Marcus explained to the assembled military leaders. Their evolution in real time. Every tactic we use against them, they adapt to within minutes. Every weapon that proves effective becomes useless as they develop countermeasures. The galactic forces have been fighting them for 3 centuries using conventional military doctrine, and they're losing. General Patricia Rodriguez, Marcus's former commanding officer and now Earth's liaison to the Galactic Defense Force, studied the tactical data with professional skepticism. And they think human snipers can make a difference against creatures that can adapt to anything? Not just snipers, Marcus replied. Human tactical thinking. Our ability to predict and counter adaptive strategies. The galaxy's military doctrine assumes that superior technology and firepower can overcome any enemy. They've never faced an opponent that gets stronger every time you attack it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's military forces had developed their tactical doctrines through centuries of fighting other humans, opponents who could think, adapt, and evolve their strategies in real time. The galaxy's other species had apparently never faced such challenges. Show them the footage from Fleet Command, Marcus said, activating the holographic display systems that Galactic Defense Force technicians had installed. The assembled officers watched in amazement as recordings from Marcus's demonstrations played out before them. But more impressive than his marksmanship was the tactical analysis he had provided. Predictions about enemy behavior that proved accurate, strategies for exploiting adaptive weaknesses, and approaches to warfare that treated adaptation as an opportunity rather than a threat. Jesus Christ, whispered Colonel James Murphy, a veteran of Earth's recent conflicts. You weren't just out shooting them, you were out thinking them. And that's what they really need, Marcus confirmed. Every species in the galaxy has some natural advantage, enhanced senses, natural armor, energy manipulation. But none of them have experience fighting opponents who adapt as quickly as they do. We're the only species that spent its entire military history fighting other intelligence capable of learning and evolving tactics. The recruitment program that followed was unprecedented in human history. Within weeks, military bases across Earth were buzzing with activity as the best snipers, marksmen, and tactical specialists from every nation were evaluated for galactic service. The selection criteria went far beyond marksmanship. Candidates needed to demonstrate the kind of adaptive thinking that could counter evolving enemy strategies. Master Sergeant Sarah Kim, a South Korean sniper with over 200 confirmed kills, found herself face-to-face with alien technology for the first time as she underwent evaluation at the new Joint Training Facility in Nevada. The testing ranges had been upgraded with galactic equipment that could simulate combat conditions from across known space. The targets will adapt to your shooting patterns, explained Instructor Velosh, the same Sithrak who had initially dismissed human capabilities. Each hit will cause them to modify their behavior. Your task is to maintain effectiveness despite continuous enemy evolution. Sarah studied the range layout with the same methodical approach that had made her legendary among Earth's special forces. How many adaptation cycles should I expect? Previous non-human candidates typically face 5 to 7 cycles before their effectiveness drops below acceptable levels, Velosh replied. The record is held by a Kelthani energy manipulator who managed 9 cycles. What followed redefined the instructor's understanding of human capabilities. Sarah didn't just adapt to the target's evolution, she anticipated it, preparing countermeasures for adaptations that hadn't yet occurred. By the 15th adaptation cycle, she was still maintaining 90% effectiveness while the holographic enemies struggled to keep pace with her tactical evolution. How many cycles do you want me to continue? Sarah asked calmly, reloading her rifle with practiced efficiency. Velosh's tongue flicked out nervously. Continue until you reach your limit. The test ran for 3 hours before the simulation's computers reached their processing limits. Sarah had successfully countered 47 adaptation cycles, a performance that exceeded what most galactic military theorists thought possible. More importantly, she had done it using principles that could be taught to other humans. Similar results were being recorded at testing facilities around the world. Human marksmen weren't just meeting galactic standards, they were redefining them. Master Gunnery Sergeant Roberto Santos from Brazil engaged targets at ranges that required him to account for planetary rotation. Sergeant Major Elena Volkov from Russia successfully hit moving targets while both she and they were in free fall during zero-gravity combat simulation. But the real breakthrough came when human tactical specialists began working with galactic weapon development teams. The combination of human adaptability with galactic technology produced innovations that neither could have achieved alone. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a former Japanese self-defense force officer with advanced degrees in ballistics and engineering, found herself working alongside Kelthani energy weapon specialists to create hybrid targeting systems. The resulting weapons combined the precision of chemical propellants with the power of energy weapons, guided by targeting computers that learned from human tactical instincts. The human brain processes trajectory calculations differently than our computer systems. Dr. Tanaka explained to her alien colleagues, "Your computers calculate optimal paths based on known variables. Human marksmen instinctively account for variables they can't even measure consciously. If we can create systems that combine both approaches." The prototype weapons that emerged from these collaborations were unlike anything in galactic arsenals. They maintained the devastating power of energy weapons while incorporating the intuitive targeting capabilities that made human marksmen so effective. More importantly, they were designed to evolve their targeting algorithms based on enemy adaptations, turning the swarm's greatest strength into a vulnerability. Meanwhile, Marcus worked with Fleet Command to develop new tactical doctrines based on human military experience. The concept of hunter-killer teams in small units of human marksmen paired with alien specialists became the foundation for a completely new approach to fighting the Void Swarm. Traditional galactic tactics assume that overwhelming firepower can solve any problem, Marcus explained during a strategy session with Admiral Tethvar and her staff. But the swarm turns overwhelming firepower into a learning opportunity. They adapt faster to massive attacks than to subtle ones. "You're suggesting we use smaller forces?" asked War Marshal Thexarin, his tactical instincts conflicting with everything he had learned about military doctrine. "I'm suggesting we use smarter forces," Marcus corrected. "Teams that can adapt faster than the swarm can. Instead of hitting them with everything we have, we hit them with tactics they can't predict, because we're evolving our approach faster than they can counter it." The first field tests of human integrated forces took place in the Outer Rim territories, where swarm incursions were frequent but not overwhelming. Human marksmen were paired with alien specialists in small teams designed to test the new tactical approaches under real combat conditions. Team Alpha 7 consisted of Marcus, a Vraxian close combat specialist named Korbash, and a Kelthani energy manipulator called Hexara. Their mission was to defend a mining outpost on Kepler 442b against a predicted swarm infiltration attempt. The attack came at dawn, with a dozen swarm creatures attempting to penetrate the outpost's perimeter, using advanced camouflage and adaptive tactics. But instead of meeting the overwhelming defensive firepower they had learned to expect and counter, they encountered something entirely new. Marcus engaged the lead creatures from extreme range, forcing them to adapt their movement patterns. As they adjusted to his shooting angles, Korbash repositioned to exploit the blind spots their adaptations created. When they modified their defenses against close combat, Hexara struck with energy attacks from unexpected directions. But the real innovation was the team's communication system. Instead of rigid tactical protocols, they used a flowing coordination system based on human small unit tactics. Each team member adapted their approach based on real-time observations from the others, creating a tactical evolution that stayed consistently ahead of swarm adaptations. Target adapted to long-range fire, moving to close quarters, Marcus reported. "Korbash, they're channeling toward your position, but..." The success of Team Alpha 7's engagement triggered a fundamental shift in galactic military strategy. Within months, human integrated units were being deployed across active war zones, each team carefully structured to maximize the synergy between human tactical adaptability and alien specialized capabilities. The results exceeded even Admiral Tethavar's optimistic projections. At the Battle of Proxima Station, Sergeant Major Elena Volkov led a mixed-species unit in defending a critical supply depot against the largest swarm offensive seen in decades. Traditional defensive doctrine would have called for massive static fortifications and overwhelming firepower. Instead, Volkov implemented a fluid defense strategy that had never been attempted against the Void Swarm. "They're probing our northeast perimeter," Volkov reported from her overwatch position as hundreds of swarm creatures began their approach. "Standard infiltration pattern, but they're testing our response times." Her team included 6 humans, 4 Vraxians, 3 Kelthani, and 2 morphic collective shapeshifters. Instead of fixed defensive positions, they operated as interconnected hunter-killer teams that could rapidly redeploy based on enemy adaptations. "Let them think we're using traditional tactics," Volkov instructed. "Alpha Team, give them a standard defensive response from the eastern bunkers. Bravo Team, prepare for mobile deployment once they adapt to Alpha's position." The swarm creatures attacked the eastern defenses exactly as predicted, their tactics evolving in real time to counter the firepower they encountered. But as they adapted to overcome static defenses, Volkov's mobile team struck from unexpected angles, forcing the creatures to adapt again. Each adaptation cycle moved them further from optimal assault tactics and closer to the vulnerabilities Volkov had prepared to exploit. "They're dispersing to counter mobile attacks," observed Kekstar, the Vraxian team leader. "Should we consolidate our forces?" "Negative," Volkov replied, tracking multiple targets through her scope. "Let them disperse. Charlie Team, move to position 7. Delta Team, prepare for close quarters engagement. They're about to cluster around the fuel depot." The battle continued for 6 hours, with Volkov's forces staying consistently ahead of swarm adaptations. By the engagement's end, the attacking force had been completely eliminated while suffering only minimal casualties among the defenders. More importantly, tactical analysis showed that the swarm creatures had been manipulated into adapting in directions that made them increasingly vulnerable, rather than more effective. Similar successes were being reported from battlefields across the galaxy. Human tactical specialists weren't just winning individual engagements, they were demonstrating that the Void Swarm's greatest strength could be turned into a critical weakness through properly applied adaptive pressure. The technological innovations continued to accelerate as human specialists worked with Galactic engineers to develop weapons and equipment optimized for adaptive warfare. The breakthrough came from an unexpected collaboration between Master Sergeant Sarah Kim and a team of crystalline entity technologists who specialized in quantum targeting systems. Human marksmen account for variables that don't exist in our quantum calculations, explained Chief Scientist Tefovar, Sarah's primary collaborator. "Your targeting instincts operate on principles we don't fully understand, but we can replicate their effects." The resulting adaptive targeting matrix combined quantum computing power with neural pattern recognition based on human marksmanship instincts. The system could predict enemy movement patterns by analyzing minute environmental changes that even human senses couldn't consciously detect, then guide projectiles along trajectories that accounted for target adaptations before they occurred. "It's like having the instincts of a master marksman combined with the computational power of a starship," Sarah explained during the system's first field test. "The computer handles the mathematical complexity while maintaining the intuitive targeting that makes human marksmen effective." The first combat deployment of the adaptive targeting matrix took place during the siege of New Geneva, where swarm forces had surrounded the planet's primary city, using tactics that had proven unbreakable for 3 months. Traditional orbital bombardment had only caused the creatures to adapt more effective underground networks. Ground assaults had failed as the swarm evolved countermeasures, faster than attacking forces could adjust their strategies, and Sarah's team descended to the planet's surface with 12 adaptive targeting matrix weapons and a mandate to break the siege using precision strikes rather than overwhelming force. The approach required unprecedented coordination between human tactical specialists and galactic support systems. Target analysis indicates 17 primary swarm coordination nodes, Sarah reported as her team established overwatch positions around the besieged city. Traditional targeting would engage them sequentially, giving the swarm time to adapt. We're going to hit all 17 simultaneously. The synchronized strike required split-second timing across multiple teams positioned kilometers apart. Each marksman needed to account for different environmental conditions, target movement patterns, and the subtle behavioral changes that would occur when the swarm realized they were under attack. All teams report ready, came the confirmations from across the battle zone. Fire, Sarah commanded. 17 shots rang out within a span of 3 seconds, each guided by adaptive targeting matrix systems that had predicted and compensated for swarm defensive adaptations. All 17 coordination nodes were eliminated before the creatures could mount an effective response, causing the siege network to collapse in minutes. The planetary governor's message to Fleet Command was brief but profound. The siege is broken. Human forces achieved in one engagement what we couldn't accomplish in 3 months of conventional warfare. News of the victory reached Admiral Tethvar as she prepared for the war's most critical operation. Intelligence reports indicated that the Void Swarm was concentrating forces for a massive assault on the galactic core worlds, an attack that could potentially end the war in their favor. Traditional defensive strategies had already proven inadequate against swarm tactics, but the human-developed adaptive approaches offered new possibilities. War Marshal Thex Aaron, the Admiral announced during the Emergency Strategic Conference, "I'm authorizing the deployment of human tactical specialists to every major defensive position in the core systems. Furthermore, all conventional defensive plans are hereby suspended in favor of adaptive defense protocols developed by human strategists." The decision represented an unprecedented gamble. The galactic government was essentially betting the war's outcome on tactical approaches developed by a species that had joined the conflict less than a year earlier. But the statistical evidence was overwhelming. Human integrated forces were achieving success, rates that exceeded anything in 3 centuries of warfare against the Void Swarm. Marcus found himself promoted to the newly created position of Human Tactical Integration Commander, responsible for coordinating defensive strategies across 17 star systems. The command center on Fleet Station Alpha gave him real-time access to battlefield conditions across the entire theater of operations. "Admiral," Marcus reported during the final pre-battle briefing, "human analysis of swarm movement patterns suggests their assault will focus on 3 primary objectives, rather than the 5 we originally projected. Their adaptation strategies indicate they've learned to concentrate force rather than disperse it." Admiral Tethavar's crystalline form pulsed with colors indicating strategic concern. "If you're correct, our distributed defenses will be inadequate at the primary contact points." "That's exactly what they're counting on," Marcus replied. "But concentrated attacks create concentrated vulnerabilities. If we can predict their focus points and prepare adaptive responses, we can turn their tactical evolution against them on a scale we've never attempted before." The war's decisive phase was about to begin, and humanity's role had evolved far beyond anything anyone could have predicted when Commander Zektar first mocked a human marksman's primitive rifle. The galaxy's survival now depended on whether human tactical thinking could out-evolve an enemy that had been adapting to overcome every challenge for centuries. As Marcus studied the strategic displays showing swarm forces massing for their final assault, he realized that the next engagement would determine not just the war's outcome, but humanity's place in the galactic community. The species that had been dismissed as technologically primitive was now leading the galaxy's most sophisticated military operation against its greatest existential threat. The irony wasn't lost on him. A simple demonstration of marksmanship had revealed that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their physical capabilities, it was their ability to think like their enemies and stay one step ahead of evolution itself. The Void Swarm's final assault began with a silence that chilled every sentient being in the core systems. For the first time in centuries of warfare, the creatures abandoned their usual infiltration tactics in favor of a massive, coordinated attack that stretched across 3 star systems simultaneously. Billions of swarm entities moved in perfect synchronization. Their adaptive capabilities focused not on individual survival but on overwhelming galactic defenses through sheer evolutionary pressure. Marcus watched the tactical displays from Fleet Command Alpha as wave after wave of enemy contacts appeared on sensors across the battle zone. The scale of the assault dwarfed every previous engagement, but the patterns were exactly what human strategic analysis had predicted. All human tactical teams. This is command. Marcus broadcast across the integrated communication networks. The swarm is committing to concentrated assault protocols. Initiate adaptive response plan Delta immediately. Across 17 star systems, human marksmen and their alien partners began implementing strategies that turned traditional military doctrine on its head. Instead of meeting the swarm's overwhelming force with matching firepower, they used precision strikes and tactical misdirection to guide the creature's evolutionary responses in predetermined directions. At the Battle of Centauri Prime, Sergeant Major Elena Volkov coordinated defensive operations that seemed suicidal by conventional standards. Rather than fortifying the planet's most defensible positions, her forces established killing zones in areas that appeared vulnerable but were actually elaborate traps designed to exploit swarm adaptation patterns. They're adapting to our defensive positions exactly as projected, Volkov reported, as thousands of swarm creatures modified their assault tactics to counter the apparent weaknesses they encountered. Phase 2 positions are ready. As the creatures evolved to overcome the first defensive line, they unknowingly moved into engagement zones where human-designed adaptive weapons were waiting. The swarm's tactical evolution was being channeled toward configurations that made them vulnerable to weapon systems they had never encountered. All teams, execute phase transition, Volkov commanded. Remember, we're not trying to stop them. We're trying to direct them. The revolutionary approach required unprecedented trust between human tacticians and alien specialists. Vraxian warriors found themselves retreating from positions they could easily defend, following human tactical guidance that seemed to contradict every instinct they possessed. Kelthani energy manipulators held their fire while targets moved through their optimal engagement zones, waiting for human coordinators to identify the perfect moment to strike. At the Kepler Defense Station, Master Sergeant Sarah Kim led the most crucial engagement of the war. Intelligence analysis indicated that the swarm's primary coordination center was located within the attacking force, a central intelligence that guided the adaptive responses of billions of individual creatures. If that coordinator could be identified and eliminated, the entire assault would lose its evolutionary cohesion. The coordination entity won't reveal itself until the swarm commits to their final adaptation cycle, Sarah explained to her team as they prepared for what might be the war's decisive moment. Our job is to force that commitment by making them believe they're on the verge of victory. Sarah's team included specialists from every major galactic species, their combined capabilities forming a tactical integration that exceeded anything previously achieved. But the operation's success depended on human ability to predict and manipulate swarm evolution at a macro level, guiding the tactical development of billions of creatures toward a single, catastrophic vulnerability. First wave contact in 30 seconds, reported Kekstar, the Vraxian team leader who had learned to trust human tactical instincts even when they contradicted his warrior heritage. They're adapting to our sensor arrays. Let them, Sarah replied, tracking movement patterns through her advanced scope system. Each adaptation moves them closer to optimal clustering around the coordination entity. The battle that followed lasted 18 hours and redefined what galactic military historians considered possible. Sarah's team didn't just engage individual targets, they influenced the evolutionary trajectory of the entire swarm assault force, using precisely timed strikes and tactical maneuvers to guide billions of creatures toward tactical configurations that served human strategic objectives. There, Sarah whispered as her targeting system identified a distortion in the swarm's movement patterns, a subtle indication that something was coordinating the adaptation responses from within the attacking force. Coordination entity identified, range 12.7 kilometers, moving with the primary assault wave. The shot that followed was the most important projectile fired in galactic history. Guided by adaptive targeting matrix technology and human tactical instincts, the projectile traveled through a battlefield where millions of creatures were actively adapting their defenses. It arrived at its target precisely as the coordination entity revealed itself to guide the swarm's final evolutionary response. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Without their central coordinator, billions of swarm creatures lost their adaptive cohesion, their individual evolution cycles becoming chaotic and self-defeating. Creatures that had been perfectly synchronized began adapting in contradictory directions, their tactical responses canceling each other out. Coordination entity eliminated, Sarah reported with professional calm that belied the magnitude of what she had just accomplished. Swarm forces are losing adaptive coherence across all engagement zones. Across the three-system battle zone, the effects rippled through swarm forces like a cascade failure. Without central coordination, their greatest strength became their greatest weakness. Creatures adapted to counter threats that no longer existed while ignoring actual dangers. Their evolutionary responses became increasingly chaotic until entire assault waves collapsed under the weight of their own contradictory adaptations. The war that had lasted 3 centuries ended not with a massive explosion or overwhelming victory, but with the quiet click of a human marksman's rifle bolt as Sarah Kim loaded her next round, a round that would never need to be fired. Admiral Tethfar's message to the Galactic Council was transmitted within hours of the swarm's collapse. The Void Swarm threat has been eliminated. Victory achieved through tactical innovations developed by human military specialists. I recommend immediate integration of human strategic doctrine into all galactic defense protocols. The celebration that followed stretched across known space, but Marcus found himself standing quietly in the observation deck of Fleet Command Alpha, looking out at stars that were safe for the first time in centuries. War Marshal Thexaron joined him, the massive Vraxian's forearms carrying ceremonial weapons that he set aside as he approached. I owe you an apology, human Marcus Chen, Thexaron said formally. When I first observed your capabilities, I thought you were an anomaly among your species. I failed to recognize that you represented humanity's true potential. Marcus smiled, remembering the arrogant Vraxian commander who had mocked human marksmanship what seemed like a lifetime ago. To be fair, nobody expected that our hunting skills would prove useful against an adaptive alien threat. It wasn't just hunting skills, Thexaron replied. It was your species' ability to think like your enemies, to understand adaptation as both strength and weakness. The galaxy's other species evolved natural advantages that made them formidable warriors. Humans evolved something far more valuable, the ability to defeat any opponent by becoming better than they are. In the months that followed, humanity's role in galactic society was permanently transformed. The species that had been considered minor contributors became the galaxy's premier military strategists and tactical specialists. Human military academies were established on dozens of worlds, training alien species in adaptive warfare techniques that had never been necessary before humanity joined the galactic community. The Galactic Defense Force was restructured around principles of adaptive strategy rather than overwhelming firepower. Human tactical specialists were integrated into every major military unit, their ability to predict and counter enemy evolution becoming the foundation of galactic security doctrine. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed evolution itself. The Void Swarm had taught them that adaptation could be a terrifying enemy capability. Humanity had shown them that adaptation could also be the ultimate defensive strategy, not just evolving to survive threats, but evolving fast enough to stay ahead of any challenge. Marcus eventually returned to Earth, but not to retire. Instead, he established the Galactic Tactical Integration Academy, where human military specialists trained alongside alien counterparts to develop new approaches to adaptive warfare. The Academy's motto, inscribed in 17 different alien languages above its main entrance, captured the lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy. Evolution is not just survival, it is victory. Commander Zektar, the Vraxian who had first mocked human capabilities, became one of the Academy's most dedicated students. He often told new recruits about the day a primitive human with a chemical propellant rifle had redefined what the galaxy considered possible. I thought I was witness